Target 4.4 deals with solving quadratic equations algebraically, either using square roots or the quadratic formula. And we talked briefly in class today about how if you're trying to solve one algebraically, if there are any x terms in the equation, once you set it equal to 0, then you have to use the quadratic formula in this particular case. Preferably, if it never specifies what method you have to use, you would probably want to try factoring first, because that usually works out easiest if the numbers work out nicely. But if they don't, you can use the quadratic formula. It just takes a little more work, and you have to be a little more careful with your math to make sure you get all the signs right, things like that. So if we look at the first problem, part A, it says x squared plus x equals 6x plus 12. So I can tell that I have x terms here. Even if I cancel out, like subtract the x on one side or subtract the 6x from the other, we're still going to have x terms on one side of the equation. So this is going to be one where I have to either factor or use the quadratic formula. Now for this particular one, what I want to do is I want to get one side equal to 0 as just sort of in as brief of a step as I can. So I'm going to cancel out the 6x and the plus 12 all in one step. So I take away 6x and I take away 12 from both sides of the equation, and then that leaves me with x squared minus 5x, because we had 1x before, now we have minus 5x after we took away the 6x, and we have the minus 12 because there was no other number term. And now on the right side of the equation, all of that is just equal to 0. So I have x squared minus 5x minus 12 equals 0. Now I could take the time to try and find factors of 12 that would add to give me positive 5 or negative 5. Factors of negative 12 that add to give me negative 5, but I'm not going to have any luck. There are no nice factors that will work out there. So I'm going to have to resort to the quadratic formula. So I find my a, b, and c values. A equals 1, b equals negative 5, c equals negative 12. I'm going to take those and I'm going to plug them into the formula. So the formula is x equals negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And now I'm going to go back and plug those values in. So I have x equals positive 5, since the negative of negative 5 is positive 5, all over 2 times 1, since a was 1. And then I'm going to add and subtract the square root of negative 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 12. And then all of that is going to be over 2 times 1. Again, just plugging the numbers in from the a, b, and c I found into the formula. Then I'm going to simplify this sort of step by step. So when I first start to simplify, I get x equals 5 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 25 plus 48 all over 2. Go back and simplify that again. That becomes x equals 5 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 73 over 2. And the square root of 73 is not a nice number. So I'm just going to go ahead and try and simplify this a little bit into decimal numbers. And if I do 5 over 2, that gives me x equals 2.5 plus or minus the square root of 73 all over 2 equals 4.27. Be very careful when you plug this in, though, that you make sure and find the square root of 73 first. Go ahead and type in square root of 73 and hit enter, and then go back and divide by 2. Otherwise, the calculator will think that you want to divide by 2 first and then take the square root of that answer, which is not what we're doing. We're taking the square root of just the 73 and then dividing that answer by 2, and that gives us 4.27. So then I just finally go back and I add the two numbers together and then subtract the 2. So if I take 2.5 and add 4.27, I get 6.77. And then if I subtract the two numbers, I get x equals negative 1.77. And those are my two final answers. And from there, we will move on to the next problem. Again, you can always check your answer. I'm not going to do that here, but if you watch the video for how you solve by factoring, in part A, I showed how you can check your answer by just replacing, go back to the very original equation, x squared plus x equals 6x plus 12, and plug in the x numbers you got into each of those x's and see if both sides of the equation work out to be the same thing. If they do, you did it correct. If not, go back and check and make sure you didn't make a mistake somewhere. So that's the first part, part A, of target 4.4.